Massaba's in the middle. Wednesday here could seal it. Gassman finds Massaba.
It's now Bannon. Bannon with a great ball in. Here's an opportunity. Palmer scores! Liam Palmer has scored for Sheffield Wednesday.
Once again we go behind, once again we fail to score, once again we fail to show any sort of battle, fight and heart when it really matters. Hello and welcome to the Wednesday Till I Die podcast. I'm James Mappin, and on the show we're going to be discussing where it went wrong, whether our expectations are too high, and whether there's been a huge overreaction to the 2-0 defeat at the hands of Leeds United. We'll talk about the news that Shea Charles could be signing, with Bailey Cadamarcha going the other way, and we'll also look ahead to Grimsby on Tuesday and a return to league action this weekend, or next weekend should I say, as we take on Millwall. We'll be previewing that one as always. We're live on YouTube and on X, so if you're not following or subscribed, then make sure that you do so. And a reminder to get involved in the comments. We'll do our best to read some of them out throughout the show. Now, with me to talk about all of that is Matt Johnson, sporting the rare, I think I can call it rare, third kit there. Matt, how are you, mate? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, James. I've had Leeds United supporters in my mentions all day on Twitter, and all the last night when I got back in, I'd seen that everybody from Leeds United had picked it up yesterday and run with it. So yeah, it's been a fun 24 hours. But as you said a couple of weeks ago, you got to be able to give it and also take it as well. So enjoyable 24 hours. I'll be honest.
100%. Do you know what? That's what football's all about. It's all about the banter. Yeah. You know, you've got to give it, and when people say, "Oh, that aged quickly" or "that aged well," like that's what it's all about. Like if you're always afraid of what's going to come back at you, then you'd never say anything, would you? Really, Matt, where do we begin? Because I feel the optimism that we had at the start of the season was heightened somewhat with that win against Plymouth. And now, I don't really sense that same level of optimism anymore amongst the fan base, Matt.
Well, where do you want to start, James? Let's move on to Millwall. That's where I think we should start, to be perfectly
Grimsby.
honest.
Grimsby. That comes before. That is a good chance of a win, I think.
If anybody would like to know what we're going to talk about today, it's pretty much rinse and repeat from last week, but only just with a little bit more. I think the caveat, obviously, that's coming tonight is, Leeds United, Yorkshire rivalries aside, are a side that are levels above us. That was proved not only in terms of the points totals of the two teams last year and where they finished, but also in terms of the players and the squads. And I actually went into yesterday quite optimistic in terms of thinking this was a good time to play them. And actually, it turned out the exact opposite, because they were completely fired up by what had been a really difficult and rocky start for them. A lot of criticism coming their way from both fans in the perspective of ownerships, people questioning the manager. And ran into a Sheffield Wednesday side that they took full advantage of. And I think that is important to say how good Leeds were yesterday, because they legitimately were a really, really good side. We'll go on to talk a lot about ourselves this evening. I do also think it's worth giving credit where credit is due in terms of they were. I personally thought, I know the scoreline didn't reflect it, I personally thought they were far better than Sunderland, who we'd played the week before.
Yeah, I think they needed a reaction, certainly. It was going to go one of two ways. They were either going to get that reaction or they weren't, and they were going to struggle. Sadly for us, they kind of turned it on a little bit, didn't they? To say the least. Matt, before we get into it in more detail, because we're going to be talking about whether it was an overreaction, the tactics, whether Danny got it wrong, the fact that we've conceded yet another goal immediately after half time. Obviously, I know the one last week didn't really matter, but I think this one had much more implications this time around. But we're going to be talking about all that in a second. But first of all, great to finally get to meet you in person as well, Matt. Even if we were both sweating his bollocks off in the Crown, my God, it was hot in there, weren't it?
Yeah, 100%. I did a full lap of Hillsborough yesterday. I went down to the park to begin with because I was supposed to be meeting somebody there. They then couldn't get in there, so they then went to the fan park. They were then fangirling over Danny Roll stood outside. So I was like, right, message you. bumped into you, bumped into Glyn as well, another lad who I know. Bumped into him and his daughter. Got down to the Crown and realised I was way overdressed because you turned up in a t-shirt and shorts and we still got a right dab on. I was stood there in a jacket and jeans and thinking, oh my God, this is a really poor decision. But yeah, really, really good. It was a lot of fun just stood outside the Crown yesterday, just talking bollocks.
Well, that's just this podcast in general talking absolute bollocks, isn't it? So it was just a continuation, weren't it? But no, great to put a face to a name. What have you been doing with you? I mean, it's been weird. We haven't had a Saturday 3:00 game yet. It's been Sunday at 4, Sunday at dinner time. Then it's been Friday at 8:00. So it's been weird these 3 weekends that we've had that. Obviously there has been football, but from a Sheffield Wednesday point of view, there hasn't been football on a Saturday at all. No, and I suppose that is something that we are going to have to get used to over the next couple of years, isn't it, in terms of this new Sky deal and where the TV is going. I know lots of people have spoken on both the debate show and we've spoken on here about kind of that idea of where we ultimately would like to end up being in terms of a Premier League, but that would definitely become more of a regularity if we ever got there. Those midweek games and those random kick-off times, like the Arsenal Aston Villa match has just finished and that's 5:30 that's a regular slot, that 5:30 on a Saturday. So yeah, I suppose people better get used to it shelving their lives in certain parts of it really if they want to get down to Hillsborough. Yeah, like you said, if we ever get to the Premier League, then that'll be the norm. And I suppose, it is a big if, definitely. It seems a long way off after yesterday, doesn't it? It certainly does. Right, let's get into. Normally we kind of drill into the things that have happened in the game, like kind of not on a minute by minute basis, but we're probably not really going to do that. We'll just talk about the 2 goals. But like I said, there's loads of things to talk about. One thing that you've already half touched on really is the fact that Leeds are just levels above us. In the summer, they've sold players for circa £140 million. All right, I know that's players that they've now no longer got, but that just kind of shows the caliber of player that Leeds had certainly last season. You could argue, well, they're not as strong anymore because they haven't got those players, but still. I mean, are we right to use that as an excuse to say that that they've just got players that are far better than us? Because I've seen quite a lot of people saying, well, I didn't see Portsmouth whinging about that in opening week when they drew 3-3. I think it's got to come into it, to be honest with you, because that comes into everything now in football, like money. No matter how much we would all like to pretend that it doesn't, like money is a huge factor in football now, and it's something that doesn't level the playing field. It's a complete imbalance when you've got sides, like Leeds, like Burnley, who we'll see in a couple of weeks. Luton, I know, haven't spent mountains of money and they're not traditionally a Premier League side, but coming down with that, you see all the other parachute payment sides in terms of your Norwiches, your Sheffield Uniteds, like the other sides that, have got the riches of the Premier League money. It does imbalance things, and I suppose I think the past 2 years, the Championship has definitely become something where it's sort of like, it's still, I personally, pound for pound, I still think it's the best league in the world because of the amount of games that are played, the level of upsets that can happen. But it is slowly going more the way of the top division in this country, where there are sides that simply, someone like ourselves, in terms of actual players on the pitch, 11 versus 11, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to compete. We talk about one of the goal scorers from last night, Brendan Aronson. He was signed by Leeds United for £25 million. There would be an argument there to suggest that Sheffield Wednesday as a whole football club, including training ground and everything, wouldn't go for much more than that in this current market. And that's not to try and use that as an excuse, because ultimately, it's why one of the reasons why I love the Championship so much is because you do get more crazy results in that division than any other, where sides from the bottom end of the table or mid-table beat the top sides. But yeah, it was, if ever there was a game where you sat there and looked at it and thought, this is, these are sides who are just playing on, a different planet in terms of like the quality of players that they're able to bring on. It was that last night. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's the wrong thing, because, 2015, 16, 17, we were doing that. We were going out and splashing the cash. We were spending a lot of money. So it goes around in cycles and it comes around. But it does feel that there is the money is it would be stupid not to mention it, of course. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's when you saw him just kind of zipping the ball around and the one-touch passing and the movement and stuff, you could see the money and you could see the quality of their players. It was just evident to see on the pitch. They were, sometimes, when you have games like you've mentioned, in the Championship where you have a team at the top, a team at the bottom, and you have that old cliche. If you didn't tell me which team were which, I wouldn't be able to tell you who were top or who were bottom or whatever people say. But I mean, for me, when you look at the differences between the two sides, we were absolutely buzzing his tits off that we've signed Ike Ugbo, a striker, a goal scorer, a match winner for £2.5 million. We were having discussions on this pod, Matt, as to whether we should actually spend £2.5 million on a player or whether we should, just bin him. Or I think 4 million was the number that was being touted around. We were like, oh, shall we do it? Shall we not? Are we best off looking for someone else? I'm just looking now. Leeds signed Joe Rodon for 10 million. They also signed Bogle for 5 million. Bogle, a right back who were playing yesterday. Both of them were playing, both defenders. Spent £15 million on those two players, and nothing is being spoken about it. Whereas we are, we're like, oh, we can't spend that. That is the difference. And I know that obviously they've sold all those players, so of course they can reinvest it. But that is the difference. That they've spent that money without even a care in the world, and it's probably still not enough when if you speak to Leeds fans. And you're right. It's just the differences were just clear to see on the pitch. Just evidently. On social media, Matt, depending on who you look and who you're following and what part of the hashtag you've been looking at, there does seem to be a huge overreaction from certain sections. A lot of people saying that if we carry on playing like this, then I think someone said Danny will be gone by Christmas. I even saw someone say whether he's fishing for a nibble or something like that. I've no idea, but I look and I can't help but think there has been a huge overreaction. I mean, look, I was getting frustrated in the stands. I were getting pissed off with certain things. There were no movement. Max Lowe had the ball down on the near side. Obviously, I sit on the north. And the ball went back to, I think it went back to Deshaun Bernard, and he just threw his hands up in the air as if to say, like, there's nobody to pass to. And I'm like, yeah, there's like literally no one moving around. They're passing the ball around, and if you'd have said they had 12 men, or if we were down to 10, I'd probably go, yeah, I can see that. Like the way that it was always an extra man over. But I for kind of reasons we've just already alluded to, I was just thinking, well, look, and I don't think the season's going to be defined on whether we beat Leeds at home or not, really. And I do think there has been a massive overreaction from certain people.
Just going back to that point about Danny will be off. Danny will be off to where? Everton. Because he's only going upwards. It's not his fault about yesterday. Like, he's set a team up. Yeah, there's potentially an argument for maybe people wanted him to react sooner in terms of subs, in terms of wanting to change the game plan, in terms of being more open and going for it. But then you open yourself up to get slapped 4 or 5. Like, that is not down to a manager, that yesterday. Like, you can argue tactics, you can talk this, you can talk that. I know we're going to get onto the goal in a little bit. Go back and watch that first goal. It goes from goalkeeper to the back of the net in about 7 seconds, and it's all one touch. Like, it is what it is. Go back and look at the second goal.
On that goal as well, by the way, it was a flick. And I'm thinking, a flick in his own half, and I'm like, yeah, Windass has been trying them, and they've been coming off.
It looks good when it comes off, doesn't it? It looks great when it comes off. Go and have a look at the second one from Josip. It's a 40-yard slide rule ball through defenders to a bloke who's a track runner who just has got... The defender's got 5 yards on him. It's Jan Valery who's got 5 yards on him, and he breezes past him and has time to even steady himself and hit the shot, dink the shot. I think it's a huge overreaction. I think it has firmly brought people back down to earth the last 2 games, and you are 100% right in terms of this idea of it's an overreaction, because I don't know what people are thinking then. If you look at our next couple of games, let me just pull fixtures up, James. If you look at our next couple of games, we have played Plymouth, who you'd expect us to go and competitive. We've ended up beating them comprehensively. Sunderland, yes, they had a bad season last year. we've played the peak version of Sunderland that will be seen this year in terms of Jack Clarke, who's just gone off to the Premier League, albeit Ipswich, but he's just gone off to the Premier League for 15 odd million pound. They came, turned it on, turned us over. Fine, that happened.
Is that the Sunderland that have won their other 2 games this season? This season so far as well, that are now top of the league. Yeah.
You're then playing Leeds, who, I mean, for all intents and purposes, 3 should have gone into 3 last year. Ipswich were just a great disruptor. You then go in onto a week today where you play in Millwall, a side where you should be competing against. Away from home, you should still be competing against. You then got QPR at home, a side where you should be competing against. It doesn't get much easier, does it?
No.
In terms of who we've got and who we're playing and all the rest of it. After QPR, give me 2 seconds, James, because this has just decided to piss off into God knows where.
I think it's Luton after that, innit? I think
you've got Luton, we've got Burnley, we've got Norwich coming up. Like, from that run of games, did anybody really expect us to go and get anything from that Leeds and Southampton? Like, I would argue, no. A point out of the 2 of them would have been great.
I'm just looking at the fixtures now. It's Millwall, it's QPR at home, as you mentioned. Then we travel to Luton. Then it's West Brom at home, Bristol away, Coventry away, then Burnley at home, as you've mentioned. So for me, I just think the first 3 games, I mentioned the first one was an easy one to ease into the season. Sunderland away from home, so at the Stadium of Light, their first home game of the season in front of 40,000 fans. I think that's probably one of the worst games to have. If that was the first game of the season, or it's their first home game, so it still feels like that feeling there. And then Leeds is just always a tough game. Just really, the fact that they had a bit of a dodgy start gave us a glimmer of hope, but probably led us into a bit of false sense of security, really. And there's a comment from one of the Leeds fans saying, "Problem you had, lads, you got Leeds on a night when Leeds had to win." They definitely had the tails up.
That's absolutely it. You've got. Also Leeds. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Leeds in the league were undefeated when they turned up at Hillsborough. Like they hadn't been beaten. They'd drawn at home to Portsmouth. Who, all right, granted they expected to slap. However, they missed a sitter in the last minute. They then went to West Brom, where the whole team was in a bit of turmoil in terms of players going out the door. There was a lot of stuff surrounding. Somerville had gone. They weren't quite sure how they were replacing him. Ruta then goes and he's out the door, and you're starting to think, oh, this is looking a bit shaky. Probably completely disrupted Daniel Farke's entire prep for it. And they're also playing a playoff contender from last season who would expect to be up there again this year. They then come to Hillsborough, all of this mounting pressure on. And of course, they've gone and just turned it on and got the win. I've got, again, no problem with it. Again, you then going back to those fixtures. You're looking at Millwall next. You'd hope to get something there. That then sets you up into an international break thinking, okay, we've taken 6 points from the first 5 available. We've won the 2 that we need to. A draw wouldn't be the worst case scenario. You then go into QPR at home and you think, okay, need 3 points there. Like that's a must. You then going into a run thinking, Bristol City, there's your 3, and that's away from home. It could be quite lean, like for a little while, and you've got to be careful with this idea of, we spoke about being ambitious with predictions on the, like on the league prediction show that we did. You may finish 9th, but you still may be in with a chance of relegation come March, and you still may finish 9th, because that's how congested that mid-table was at the back end of last season. The top half of this division, I personally believe, is weaker than it was last year, because you haven't got a Leicester who have got players on near as makes no difference, 200 grand a week. You've got Leeds, who are your highest spenders within the league in terms of a wage structure and probably what they can afford to pay for transfers. Burnley are also going to be decimated, you'd imagine, in the next week. They've already lost Sander Berg. I'd imagine they lose a couple more. That might be a bit of a new look team, and you might catch them on an off day when we play them. But again, you're kind of winging in a prayer. West Brom are flying at the minute in terms of like results and looking very, very good. It's a tough division. Like, people are just going to have to get over it. And if you're whinging now, if we do ever get into the Premier League, what do you think? We're going to be competing against Man City and Arsenal. Like, just got to learn. Everyone's just got to learn to just temper your expectations, because I'm with you. Before the season, I love Gab Sutton. He's great. But in predicting us to finish in the playoffs, seemed to go around everybody who I know on social media of him being like, I think they're a dark horse for it. A dark horse means you could either finish 6th or 14th. That's what a dark horse means. It doesn't mean they're definitely guaranteed to finish there. The way in which that we finished the season last year, rightly so, has got everybody optimistic. But this is a real big reality check of just slow down. We've had 2 poor games. This time last year, the world was falling apart. It's 3 games into a league season. Everybody calm down.
Yeah, 100%. Let's just get onto the tactics and whether we feel Danny got the tactics all wrong. I'm just going to read a few of the comments out as well, so do keep them coming in. Alex said, outplayed and outbattled last night, missed a proper defensive midfielder to put a foot in. Bannon and Ingleson, same kind of player for me. Plus, I think we needed to start a 5-3-2 with Smith up top. Adam's showing some love for the shirt. Matt, shirt looking so nice, very envious of you. Gary said, Portsmouth, West Brom match them. We know they've better than us, so treat it like a cup tie in their faces. 100% effort. I didn't really see that from us all game. I think we were poor. And Dave has said, see where we are after Millwall and QPR. Just on that then, in terms of the tactics, I've seen a few people saying that Danny got it totally wrong last night. It's a weird one because I think we've fallen foul of Leeds being the 3rd game of the season, or the 4th game if you want to include Hull, where, like you said, after Sunderland, we're not really sure whether it's the system that's working, the plays. We've won 1 game, we did well with a different 11 against Hull, and then we've got slapped against Sunderland. So we're going into this Leeds game. Is it working? Is it not working? You can't really say. If we'd lost both, not won any of the 3, and in a similar situation to kind of how we were last season, then it's totally different. Or if we'd have won both games again, that would have been different. Whereas, it's always easy to say after the event that we should have done that. Now, if this game comes in, 15, 16 games into the season, and Leeds, are top of the league, they've only lost 1 game, and they're flying high. They've got a 4-5 point cushion at the top, and they're absolutely smashing teams left, right, and centre. Then it's a whole different ball game because you kind of know what to expect. And now, I think, Danny's probably gone into this, like everyone else, like myself included, thinking this is probably the best time to play Leeds. They're feeling a little bit sorry for himself. And, if there is a good time to play him, which never is, maybe this is it. And kind of just like the Sunderland game, really, it's just not really worked. But, do you think Danny got it right with the tactics, or do you think he got it wrong? I think it is fair to say that he did actually get it wrong, even though what I've just said. But I don't think anyone would have questioned it, at 7 o'clock when the team lineup came out.
The only thing for me that I thought personally was wrong yesterday, but I think this is down to personnel. I don't necessarily think this is him. I think he's, in terms of the personnel that he has currently available to him, who are fit and available and ready to start in a very competitive match of football. The only thing that I would have liked to have seen is I would have liked to have seen a defensive midfielder brought in to that game yesterday to fill the gaps, because it was very clear after 10-15 minutes that the game plan from Leeds was not to leave their most, he'd swapped out Gassama to bring in Paul Valentin to man mark, to effectively do a job and double up on Willie Nonto, who is, I think a lot of people will be drawn to him and how much he does. Where I think it was wrong is actually Nonto spent much of the game drifting into central areas of the pitch, and actually drifting into that number 10 spot, allowing a wing back to then go on the overlap. You've then got 2 players who are trying to defend a 40-yard ball over a switch ball, and you'd back one of them to get there and a centre half to cover it. I would have liked to have seen a central defensive midfielder dropped in there. Now, you could argue that we have that in either Ingleson, who I think could play there, or Chalobah, who is just simply, at this point in time, he's just not fit. Would you have felt comfortable in basically putting Liam Palmer on him? I think if you if you put him in a wherever he goes, do not be more than 5 yards from him. Like there's that clip that goes around on social media, and there are like Park Ji-sung like basically just following people around the pitch like Messi.
Yeah.
Like that would have been fine. Like you could do that, but then you're effectively just sacrificing one of your players and saying we'll play with 9. I think it's really difficult. I think for me, after last night, I think I saw a stat today that since the start of last season, when we concede first, home or away, the record is appalling reading. We have won 1, drawn 2, lost 22.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't matter what way you dress up tactics. That doesn't matter because we've had 2 managers in that spell. That's nothing to do with tactics. That's nothing to do with this. That's down to players being able to continue to implement a style on a pitch. And this is not me trying to pin it all on players, because as I've said, I think there were elements of it which Danny got wrong yesterday. We saw it again yesterday. After the first goal went in, we looked shell-shocked for about 15 minutes and were probably, I know Leeds didn't have anything clear-cut, but we're probably lucky not to go in 2-0 down.
But you know what? Other teams will know that. Teams will know that when we go 1 behind, we are, just a sitting duck. Yeah, and that is the best time to get another goal. Well, how many times do you see it that a team scores and then they sit back and then they get countered and then it's 1-1? But with us, you're right, we concede, and if anything, chuck another tenner on us scoring conceding another goal in the next 10 minutes, because it'll probably happen. And it certainly felt like that. We were kind of pinned back, and it felt like it were coming again. And like you said, we couldn't put string 2 passes together. We just looked kind of bereft of ideas. I made the cardinal sin of tweeting on 20 minutes saying, great 20 minutes so far, front foot pressing, creating chances, more of the same. Literally, ball goes down the other end, goal. And I'm like, why have I done it to myself?
James, while we're having an amnesty, for those of you who didn't see my tweet yesterday, I sent out a tweet with the Gary Neville saying "This is the banker, this will never lose," which was Leeds fans coming to Hillsborough and singing, marching on together, and then being silent for the next 90 minutes. That was really nice to see that we all sat on our hands for 90 plus minutes, wasn't it? After high ho.
Do you know what? Do you know what? I mean, I think obviously with my tweet that had no bearing. You could have wound the Leeds fans up a little bit with that one, and maybe, maybe that got them going a little bit.
Before the game, nobody had interacted with it. After the game, God, they couldn't get out of my mentions. But just going back to that original point there about the idea of another team scoring. The one that I did leave off from that is the goals scored in that. So bear in mind, this is since the start of last season. The goals scored that we have scored is 9. The goals that we have conceded is 59. That is an absolute. We talked about this, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, in terms of we went through a spell where we first went down to League One where we couldn't come from behind. If we went behind, that was it, the game was done. Up until Josh Windass scored that miss kick against MK Dons and we won 2-1. That was the first time we'd done it in, I think it was the best part of 18 months. We then went on a run of 18 months where we seemed to have fixed it. We're now on another one, which is approaching 18 months, where we're back into the exact opposite and a reverse of it. That, to me, personally, is down to players on the pitch needing to take responsibility and step up and actually having some leadership, because I looked around after, I think it was about 70 minutes yesterday, actually on the pitch. Leeds were bopping the ball about. We were just chasing shadows, just sat in a defensive shape. And I was looking around the pitch thinking, okay, who is your leader here who is going to step up and get into players? Who is somebody who is going to continue to try and motivate people to make them believe that they can get back into this on the pitch, not from the sidelines, actually on the pitch? I looked at the back four. Dominic Iorfa, Dishon Bernard are not that at this point in time in their careers. I think we've seen enough of Dominic Iorfa to suggest that is not him. That's not to suggest that he's not a good player, but it's not him and it's not his style. Max Lowe and Jan Valery are both new to the team and don't look like that they're going to do that. Bannon, I think, is polarising with that. I think he's very much tough love rather than arm round the shoulder and encouragement unless things are going well. Ingleson looked like he didn't know what was going on yesterday in terms of they were just bodies screaming past him, and I think he was expecting players to be where they should be and actually they weren't.
Just on that Ingleson, I really hope he's not Momo Diaby Mark II. I thought Momo Diaby was the second coming of Yaya Toure. When he first played them 45 minutes against Preston. we all thought Ingelsson was like, you know, the next best thing in that first game, and then since in the last two he's gone a bit missing. I think you're right. He's not there, but I'm joking when I say that.
No, of course. I just think he's a system player in terms of when the system is working well and when the system is clicking and we are playing and carrying out and executing that game plan, it frees him up to look like he can do that. Yesterday, there were times where, and you know, while we're touching on tactics, that two in midfield, both of them were doing the same thing, and both of them were so flat and so level, which to a degree is good positioning. But there is also a point where the ball goes between the two of them and they both spin round expecting somebody to be there, and there's a Leeds player in 30 yards of space running at a back four with 4-on-4, and you're thinking, fuck.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it was something that, you know, we'd spoke about a couple of weeks ago, and we definitely spoke about last week against Sunderland, but it is something that I think is worth addressing, and I think that is a mentality of a squad. You know, we've done very well in terms of keeping a core group of players from the promotion season, really, who have served us well, and we've started trimming some of the deadwood. But there is still that attitude there from last season that when we go behind, that's it. You might as well call it a day at the minute. And that does need to change if you are looking to be progressive in terms of finishing that mid to upper mid table, which I would hope is realistically where most people are thinking. Because if you are thinking, oh, we can get into the playoffs, and if we don't, that's a poor season. I mean this really nicely. You need to go and have a seat with Dejphon Chansiri, who thinks we should be winning the league. Because last night, if that is not a reality check for you in terms of your expectations, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's, do you know what, with this whole kind of these first three games and the two defeats that we've had, I really hope it is just a case of playing Sunderland, who are going to be a team that's going to be up there come the end of the season, and playing Leeds, which I'm pretty much nailed on, is going to be a team that's going to be up there come the end of the season. So I hope that's what it is, and it's not. And it's not a case that, you know, we're going to be struggling or anything like that. Let's just go and move on and talk about the fact that I saw a lot of people on social media saying that there was no fight, there was no battle in that midfield being totally overrun. It seems very, very much like last season as well. And for me, I feel that the fact that people are saying that there's no fight and no battle, I totally agree with it. But I don't think Danny Rill's side is going to be like that, because that's what we had at the back end of last season. But that's when we had a Will Volks that gives you all of that. You know, it gives you that fight and those crunching tackles and stuff. Whereas Danny Rill said that was kind of moving away from his principles. So I just don't think we're going to see anything like that. We're not going to battle hard and get a hard fought point from sides. We're going to be trying to be playing this sexy football, as he's been saying in pre-season, and I don't. It's a difficult one. I think it's going to be a massive thing for the fan base to actually adjust to. There's actually, you know, cliche, but you know, it's a northern team. You go back and look at certain players. Jose Semedo, everyone absolutely loved him. Wasn't a great footballer, but put 110% effort in and showed a lot of passion. George Byers, I mean, he was a good footballer, but what did he do? He showed the passion and he, you know, gave 110%. Will Volks, another one, exactly the same. You know, crunching tackles. We as fans love those sorts of players. We haven't really got any of them players anymore, have we?
No. And I wouldn't expect, unless something happens in the next couple of days that drastically changes that we're all of a sudden about to go out and sign somebody. You know, we're going to come on later in the show to talk about the potentially imminent signing of Shay Charles from Southampton. He's a 20-year-old kid who's a technically very gifted footballer and looks brilliant and can play that central defensive midfielder position. But it's pretty. It's not nice. Like it's really, really attractive football where he wants to get on the ball and wants to do things. He's not somebody who's going to kick lumps out of somebody or anything like that. And that was, I agree with you. I think that was something that was really clearly evident yesterday. It took until the 80th minute before I think it was Dominic Iorfa went into a 50-50 tackle and left, I can't remember who the Leeds player was, just on the floor in a crumpled heap. And I'm thinking, surely this should have been happening after the first one when they've continued to bop it round and one touch flicks around the corner. Somebody's got to somebody's got to go through them, even if it's, and again, as you say, whether it's synonymous with the area, but I would argue that potentially probably clubs in London would still, like clubs like Brighton, yes, they play attractive football. They have still got somebody in the midfield who is not afraid of lifting somebody. We currently, at this point in time, do not have that player at our disposal. And that is what we've been talking about, with the transfer window. It is a transitional season, at least for 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. It's not an overnight, it's not just going to happen overnight. We don't have a really well-rounded and well-balanced squad. We have a better squad than last year, but it's not complete and fully well-rounded because we are not going out and paying transfer fees for people. We're paying, what is it, total this window? We've spent, 4 million if you include Ike Ugbo, Olaf Kabaki and Jan Valery. Everybody else is frees and loans. On 4 million,
they're all frees. There's only one loan. It's all frees. It's freebies.
And that's it. I don't care who you are. You are not going to go about building a ridiculously competitive side. And I know that people will talk about Oxford did it. And I think it was, who was it earlier on who mentioned about Portsmouth, which I take the point about that from, it was Gary, sorry, Gary. Sorry for missing the name check. I completely take the point about Portsmouth. But again, a little bit of perspective. It's their first league game back up in the Championship after being down in the doldrums of League 2, not just League 1. The club nearly going to the wall, all the rest of it. A big day on Sky, in front of the cameras, blazing hot sunshine, and you get those mental results on those first couple of weeks. Oxford, they have a combative attitude at this point in the season. Let's see if that's still there in October and November. Because I can guarantee you by then, when they get a couple of injuries and you're looking at those players who need to come in and need to fill in, it won't be the starting 11. Everybody is playing with, in theory, their best side at the minute, which we are. I agree, we are potentially, aside from Ike Ugbo, who is instrumental to the way that Danny wants to play football. And you would potentially argue Nathaniel Chalobah, who he seems to have a real liking for, but again, currently is out injured. So we are missing players at this point in time, which is, again, I think hampering the tactics of what we can and can't do, and that then feeds into that fight and that battle that I suppose that people feel that we're lacking at the minute.
Yeah, just on Ike Ugbo, I can't believe that he was here at the back end of last season. He left Sheffield Wednesday and then signed for, let's check my notes, Sheffield Wednesday, and yet he's seemingly what the fuck were he doing? He's seemingly unfit and not match fit. What was he doing in pre-season? Was he just tossing it off for a couple of months? I can't believe how someone can be so unfit that he can only come on for 20 minutes. I mean, the players must have been absolutely beasted in pre-season for him to be so far off it.
Yeah, and I think also potentially, if you're looking at, I don't know, maybe the idea of get to the international break and then Ike Ugbo takes that spot, and then you're looking at maybe Jedi Gassama and Jamal Lowe rotate out wide. I'll buy that argument because actually he's had no competitive football. How many games of competitive football did that squad have? 4 or 5?
Yeah.
He's just simply not had any football. I can do as much running as I possibly want over the next 6 weeks. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be ready to start a Saturday match. It doesn't. And that, I know I'm talking miles of levels different below. It's not just turn up and play. He will be fit enough to be able to keep up with it. But actually, when you're going up against really competitive teams like the side last night who are on your game. And I suppose the other thing is, as we all know from last season, Danny is huge on numbers surrounding injuries. And actually, this is what player management looks like. How many times have we been screaming out under the Darren Moore era and last year, why are all our players always injured? We need to manage our players better. We need to look after them a bit more so that they're there at the important points in the season. And then when it comes and people are whinging, and it happens because they're just not ready to start and they're not ready to go. Because I don't, you know, like I understand that you've raised the point, but it's not just you who's been saying that. There's been loads of people on social media who've been saying, why is Ugbo not starting? Why is this? Why is that? Well, he's not starting because he's not ready. Like, again, the manager has done enough to earn the trust of every single one of us. It's 2 poor results. Please calm down a bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've leaked the notes to Adam or not, because next on the list is going to be talking about Masaba. Adam said, not sure on the criticism Masaba got last night. Yeah, end product may have been poor, but genuinely felt he was our only attacking threat last night. Adam, I'm going to criticise Masaba. I'm going to be one of those people. I do apologise, because so frustrating. How can one player frustrate me so much? It's unbelievable. There was one point in the first half where he's steaming down the far side in front of the south stand. He gets in front of the away end. He chops back onto his right foot. The defender, I think he would, you know, if it weren't for the advertising audience, he would still be sliding now. He'd done him all ends up. He then takes all the time in the world to let the defender get back on his feet, to get back across. He then decides to chop again onto his left foot, and then the defender then gets a blocking. Like, he's tried to beat him about 7 times. Like, just get a crossing. There was times in the second half as well. Again, so he's on the near side now, where in front of me where I'm sat, and he's got the ball, and you just think, just put a cross in. Now I get it. You know, the defender he's come up against is, you know, he's doing well. He's blocking off the cross. Put the cross in. He's going to get a deflection. It'll probably go out for a corner. Keep that attack alive. What happens? He goes back to Barry Bannon. He then can't get the cross in. It gets forced out, and then the attack's just broken down. Now, to be fair, I just said, you know, get a corner. We wouldn't have got anything from the corner because that never happens. So I suppose, yeah, he probably did right by playing it back. But my oh my, there was a time as well. There was one where in the first half he's burst through. I'm not being funny. Masaba, I thought Masaba was really quick. We've signed him for his pace, and he runs, and then he just runs away from goal, and then checks back, and then before he knows it, there's 3 people around him, and that again, that attack's broken down. I just find him. I get your point, Adam. Like, yeah, he was given us that attacking threat, mainly because on the opposite side you had Valentin, who was preoccupied with their lad Nonto. So the left hand side was kind of the only place that we could really send the ball to get a move going. You know, Windass was playing in that central defensive midfield role as he does. He's almost like turning to Barry Bannon, and he really, where, you know, we criticise him for dropping deep. Windass is doing that. So yeah, Masaba was really the only outlet. There was times in that second half I was really getting frustrated with him, and yeah, he's trying, but comes down to the end product again. There is none. There is literally none. You know, he had a great first game, all bar getting a goal. I think he did everything right. He was left wanting, I think, against Sunderland, and then again, it was one of those where, you know, you mentioned about players' heads dropping, and, you know, when we go goal down, he's one that really just lost it as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, he's come. Adam, I'm sorry, he's come under a lot of criticism from me. I'm sorry on that one.
I'll jump onto Adam's case on that first one that you mentioned, because I agree with you. I was madly frustrated surrounding that double check back that he did on. It was Jaden Bogle as well, who you know was still, you know, I mean, he was out the back of the Leppings Lane end and on his way back to Bramall Lane after the first chop. The second one, yeah, he didn't need to do it. But actually, I think that was probably more down to the area where he's looking to cut the ball back. There is nobody there, Ingleson and Bannon, who should be on the edge of the area. You know, you watch how many goals that we scored towards the back end of last season. You take the Windass one from the Plymouth game, where he's done all his good work out wide, cuts the ball back onto the penalty spot or the edge of the 6-yard area, and there's somebody there to tap it in. He chops back inside and there's nobody there because all of the runners have gone in, leaving that space behind him. Now, I would argue you have EK Ugbo, like we saw for that Birmingham goal, for his first goal for Sheffield Wednesday last year. He holds his run on the edge of the area, recognises everybody steaming in, holds the run, potentially taps it in. We don't know. We're talking ifs, buts and maybes. And to borrow a classic Twitter phrase, I only do absolutes. Sorry, James, I had to get that one in. But I agree on the rest of the game. I think he is a 2024 version at the minute of Jermaine Johnson. At the moment, he is, again, you mentioned it last year, and it's a phrase that I love to go back to, that speedboat, no driver. At the minute, there is a lot of that. Pre-season, we saw some real composed play for him against Werder Bremen, where he's chopped in and taken it round the keeper and put the ball in the net. At the minute, I think he looks a little lost. And I think that's down to the options of that backup, where it should be Windass who's coming in on the edge of the area, but actually Windass runs straight into the middle of the goal and takes everybody with him. You've then got to look at one of your centre midfielders to come and back that up and fill that space, and neither of them do. I think it went out for a corner, didn't it? And Bannon was screaming at him about, like, you should have laid the ball back. And I was thinking, well, when he first chopped the ball back, he couldn't lay it back because you were about 20 yards back up the pitch. So if we're gonna start pointing fingers here, let's start there. Yeah. Second half, I agree with you, but I'm really pleased that you mentioned that stuff about the ball was just going out down the left-hand side, because the ball was going to the left-hand side and just getting stuck there because the output on the right-hand side yesterday was non-existent. Absolutely non-existent. And I know you've sacrificed Jedi Gassama to go and play Paul Valentin, but you have to have some attacking outlet and threat coming from the other wing, because it then becomes really easy to defend, because any time the ball goes out to Anthony Masaba, you just have three players who go to him, and eventually somebody will take it off him. Because actually, when there was a stat that came out today about Paul Valentin as well, I've only got the goals, I haven't got the assists. The assists weren't much better than this. Paul Valentin started playing in 2014, 2015. That was his first season. Do you know how many career goals he has, James?
I'm normally stat man.
Yeah.
How many goals he's got since, what, in eight seasons? Is that...
8 seasons, yeah.
2.
Correct.
Great guess.
His assists are 5 in 8 seasons of football. So, again, I'm fully aware that he is a really, he became a bit of a cult figure up at Hillsborough last year, but effectively what you have got coming down the right-hand side is a miracle if you're going to get something from that. It's ultimately the other reason why in games like we saw yesterday, I would always prefer to play Jedi Gassama over Anthony Masaba. I know Anthony Masaba's output was higher than Gassama's last year, but I think what you saw with Gassama when he was brought onto the field of play is exactly what Gassama gives you, in that he gives you an out. He is brilliant at travelling with the ball. He is brilliant at getting you further up the pitch and winning fouls. He is great at that. What I felt we saw a lot of in terms of my biggest frustration with Anthony Masaba yesterday was, if he's not trying to play the ball first time round the corner straight to nobody, it takes him 2 or 3 touches to get the ball under control, and then he's trying to beat people 20 yards out from goal. It's not what you need in a game like that, and I'm all for him doing that on the halfway line. That comes down to, I think, a recognition of, I suppose, going back to that argument of, did Danny get the tactics wrong? I completely understand the reasoning behind it, because Anthony Masaba at the minute, it appears, is higher up the pecking order, but I just thought yesterday was horses for courses, and I would have much preferred to have seen Jedi Gassama on the pitch, because I think he has the ability to leave a player for dead and go. He doesn't want to chop back 3, 4, 5 times. Once he beats somebody, he's far more direct than Masaba, whereas Masaba, it always feels, wants to stand his man up, wants to beat him again, make sure he's sat him down, and then go from him. But again,
I get why Danny did it, because when you look at both goals, they both came down the opposite side, and as much as Nonto had a good game, he, like you mentioned, he had to come inside a hell of a lot, which I don't think is really his game. All right, it might be. I confess I've not seen a great deal of him. I don't watch a lot of Leeds, but from what I have seen, it does look like he's going down the wing and then cutting inside to have a shot on goal. He didn't really he couldn't do that, because obviously there was 2 players on him. So from that aspect, it kind of worked, but then it just meant that there was an overload in the middle of the park, and where we didn't really have any players in the middle, so it kind of backfired on us a little bit. But I fully get what he's done, because it's like almost you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Because if he'd not done that, then everyone's gonna say, oh, you fucking know he's the best player. Like, why have you not put an extra man on him? Like, you've just given him he's always going to beat Jan Valery, and then you're like, oh, well, you know, what do you do? It's a very difficult one. And
but, I mean,
it just didn't work, did it? Really? And a lot of people said just play your own game, and it's it comes off as a tactical genius, but yeah.
Correct. Sorry for interrupting, James. It didn't work, and there's two reasons for that. One, Max Lowe didn't have a bad game yesterday. For anybody who was saying, he had a really tough night up against him, I thought he handled him fairly well because nothing come down the wing. Willie Gnonto is smart enough to recognise, I'm getting fuck all joy here. Let me go and find that huge chunk of space there in the middle of the park and drift, because he has the licence to be able to do so. It was... This sounds ridiculous. It was so refreshing to see a winger thinking, oh my God, he doesn't have to stay out wide. Like, I know, like, that was something that I was watching in that second half thinking, he's done this 3 or 4 times now, where the ball's gone to the opposing centre half, it goes out to the right back looks up, he realises he's getting pressure, centre half steps into the space, wears his pass 20 yards in front of him, in between the two midfielders, into Willie Gnonto, who is in about 10 foot of space, who turns and just gets straight at the back four. I cannot believe in 90 minutes yesterday, not one player on that pitch recognised that was happening and took the responsibility. Because a coach can demand that and shout that and all the rest of it. But again, I get that if you're in the heat of the moment, it's quite difficult to see that from the vantage point on the touchline. I'm aware that, up in the stands, you have a much better view. I could not believe a player was not on that pitch yesterday. You're Bannon. Iorfa recognised it, but then he's having to step out of a back four and go to challenge him, which if he nicks it round the corner, which he did in the first half, it's almost like the straight in.
Yeah,
I cannot believe somebody didn't recognise it and go, fucking hell, right, I'm going to go and sit in that gap for the next 10 minutes and just plug this space. But again, we're talking, I think it was LUFC 1920, who, oh God, there's a lot of Leeds fans in these comments. So,
yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. It's like my fucking mentions this from last night. Basically, he was saying about the idea of you need to have, it's less about blaming the players and actually looking at the players who step in should be comfortable enough to do the job. And whilst I completely take your point on that, I think it's more of who's replacing who at Sheffield Wednesday at this current point in time that you have to look at, because Jeddy Gassama and Antti Masaba there's no ifs or buts about it, they are our two best attacking wide players. The drop-off to Paul Valentin, as we saw last night, is, cool, he's great defensively, but actually going forward, you receive nothing from him. And when we saw the best of him last year was when he got a run of games in the side in a deeper position.
Yeah, totally get that. Let's do the 3-word match reviews then, and then we'll talk about the goals. There's some great ones. Actually, just whilst we were talking about Gnonto, he went through the back of Bannon and got a yellow card, didn't he, fairly early on. I thought the only chance is going to be if he does it again and gets sent off. And I'm surprised we didn't wind him up more, because there was a point where he went down in the box going for a penalty, and the ref come over and told him just to get up. And he was obviously quite aggrieved with that. And I thought, this is the point here where you can just wind him up, get him another yellow and get him sent off. But I just don't think, well, if we did, we didn't try hard enough. I must admit, I did think he's going to get himself sent off because he was a bit frustrated. But then they kind of got the upper hand, didn't they? Really, and that was that. Right, let's read some of these 3-word match reviews out. There is some absolute belters. Michael Wareham, better team won. Ben, midfield non-existent. Neil Dunn, still work in progress. Andy, men versus boys. Ryan, not there yet. Arnage Rob has gone with honeymoon is over. Ross Stevens, when's Plymouth away? Adam Dalamo, when I was in here, non-existent midfield. Kelly's gone Leeds, far superior. Got one from Roll Madrid, great name by the way. Ugbo on late. Better team won, no end product, stop blaming individuals, wasn't even competitive, lacking so much. Charity FC standard. reality kicks in. This is a good one. 54 quid. Obviously, a reference to how much you'll have paid to go to that game last night. No central midfield. Craig Barton seems pissed off. Same old shit. Clearly wasn't there for the Plymouth game. Pathetic, poor commitment. Didn't even try. Gone backwards, unfortunately. Time for bed. What time did he send that one? Oh, we're only off 10. That's plenty of time left. Another hour and a half on that one. Not good enough. Yeah, it's all pretty much the same. Painful to watch. Work in progress. Simon said, still miss Volks. And Stuart kind of sums it up, really. Outclassed, outplayed, and outfought. Yeah, got to agree on that one. Let's, before we talk about Shea Charles and Bailey Cadamartri and then look ahead to the two games that we've got coming up this week, just quickly on the goals. The first one was just, like you've mentioned before, really well worked from back to front. Danny, I don't know if you've listened to Danny Rill speaking to Rob Staten after the game, but he's using words I've no idea. I thought I knew a little bit about tactics in football. I might have done about 10 or 15 years ago. I've got no idea what he's talking about. It goes way over my head and seemingly way over the players' heads as well, because they didn't do what he wanted to do, and it clearly didn't work. I hope that they understand all this jargon. Do you know what? I thought it was a good tackle by Paul Valentin at first. I've watched it again. I think he's probably going to give a penalty if the lad doesn't stick it away. To be fair, but you picked out Dom Iorfa as being just doing fuck all, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, just going back to the original point, from Melier to the back of the net, it's about 7-8 seconds. So it is a lightning quick goal. And again, similar to what we saw at Hillsborough last year with the second goal from Nonto. Ball goes out, obviously, to the right back. It's then isn't it nice when a back heel, first time back heel in your own half comes off.
And we've seen one of them last week. Yeah.
We've seen one of them, but for an opposition goal. I'd like to see one for Wednesday come off. Really, really clever play out wide, and it does completely just nullify and take out everybody down that side, because also I couldn't believe how close they were to the touchline when they were doing that, Leeds. And I'm really not meaning to turn this into a, oh my God, Leeds are wonderful kind of fest. But it is a really well worked goal. It's when the ball goes into Nonto that I have an issue, because your back four is all over. Deshaun Bernard has gone to do that. I think from what you were talking about, that Danny Roll press conference, he's gone to press and push out towards the ball. Like he's the one who, rather than pressing as a unit yesterday, was sit in shape and go to press kind of like 1-to-1. And we did see that in instances yesterday. When the ball goes on to Willie Nonto, again, he finds that freedom of Hillsborough in the middle of the park. My issue here is Dom Iorfa has a decision to make, and he has to make the right one, and he does neither, really. He doesn't really do anything. He just kind of follows the ball and ends up in a terrible position for where the ball ends up in. The ball goes into Nonto in the middle of the park. He's right in the middle of the park. He's inside of the kind of like the centre circle. Dom Iorfa has to either go to Nonto and bring him down, which he doesn't do, which goes back to that point we were making about we've got to get a little bit nastier, but he doesn't do it. If he's not going to do that, he's got to recognise that the guy to his left is getting absolutely burnt for pace out wide. And he's got to go and track him, because I don't care how fast Dan James is, Dominic Iorfa is still the fastest man in Yorkshire. And he's got to get back. He's got to get back and recognise, okay, at some point somebody's going to have to go to him. That means that whoever it is in the central defensive positions, I think, is it Paul Valentin's one, and I don't know who the other is.
Valerie's the other one, because they've had to all come over. They've all had to shift over.
Realistically, Dom Iorfa has got to go with the runner who's going to keep up and keep pace and nullify that. One of those has got to come out. It's not an ideal situation, because I'm talking about this and I'm just thinking, oh my God, this is just like panic stations in it at this point.
Because it's happened so quick as well, and it's easy to, when we're stopping it and moving it on like frame by frame and saying, oh, he's got to go there, but everyone's just out of position, innit? You've got one centre-back that's on the halfway line. You've got another one that, like you've mentioned, that's trotting across the pitch. You've then got a right-back and a right winger who are now playing, centre-back and right centre-back. Everyone's just all of it shop, just because they've just pulled us all over the show. And
100%. And it's, I mean, when the ball goes down to the wing, is it Joseph who the ball goes down to? I mean, he does really well to check back. I actually thought, do you know what? Our defensive cover from Paul Valentin actually isn't that bad. It was the tackle. I think when you watch it back, you think, oh, shit, that's 100% a penalty if he don't go in the back of the net. But he actually does really well in getting goal side of him and making, and putting in something to put him off. The feet then from Joseph is good. The finish is good. Again, I just think it's those. You've 100% hit the nail on the head there. We're talking split-second decisions which top players make. At present, we don't have those players who make those top-level smart decisions. And that's not a slight on Dominic Iorfa. We have championship players who don't make consistently those right decisions, which is ultimately why they find themselves at that level. I think if we're all being honest, Dominic Iorfa, in terms of a physical specimen and what his attributes are, should be playing higher than championship football. It is, sadly, his injuries and those split-second, real-time decisions that are not, well, that are currently holding him back from being there or have held him back in his career. It's those type of decisions. But again, ultimately, it's a really, really well-worked move. It was Leeds completely carving us open. And again, the finish is really good. I've seen a lot of criticism online for James Beadle. I think so much of that is unwarranted, because what the fuck he's supposed to do for either of the goals, because they are both good finishes, is, I mean, mental to be.
Yeah, that second one that you alluded to, Dan James's goal, again, it's just another one where they just catches on the break, and I think it's Max Lowe it looks like he's running through treacle. I don't know how fast Max Lowe is. He's certainly not as fast as what Dan James is, because he absolutely leaves him for dead. And it's a tricky one because the ball's played in our half, so Dan James he's never going to be offside. So you can't step up when but there's no cover whatsoever. And the ball goes out to him, and you see him as he's running through. I'm just thinking to myself, because where I'm sat, I've got a perfect view. It's like kind of pretty much in line when he takes the shot. Well, it's not really a shot, is it? Really, he almost like, it's a dink, but he like, I don't know. It's a stubs his toe. I could see all the Leeds fans celebrating in the background. I'm thinking, how do you even know it's gone in? Like, because I couldn't, I was waiting for the defender to come across and clear it off the line, but he's obviously got just enough on it. And James James Beadle this time was meant to look rather silly, weren't he? When how he's gone down, and I don't know if he's done it with the eyes or what, but I was so frustrated, Matt, how we've literally, for the second week in a row, we've come out after half time and conceded a goal within the next 2-3 minutes.
Tell you what, James, didn't we half set the tone for the start of the second half after kick-off by booting the ball straight out of play? I mean, that gives you the indication of kind of like where our level of, we have become really good starters to a game this season. If you took the first 10 minutes of all of the games, we look world class. If you took us just on the start of the second half, we are still in the dressing room after second half. The ball, again, comes from Masaba working the ball into Paul Valentin. I personally feel Paul Valentin's got to go to meet the ball and draw a foul. He doesn't really do either. He sort of dangles a leg at it and gets caught in possession. The ball from Joseph to Dan James is incredible. I think back to the Barry Bannon to Anthony Masaba at Millwall last year, that defence splitting pass, similar type of ball. It is an unbelievable ball. But again, our defensive line, aside from, is it Valerie who's running with him, is so high. But Jan Valerie's got to go with the man. Again, I've seen things online that suggest that's where you need your keeper being a progressive sort of sweeper keeper and coming out. And I don't want my keeper anywhere near the centre of the pitch. I don't want my keeper that high up. Dan James is going to burn 99% of players in this league in a one-on-one foot race. I think Gary in the comments has been incredibly harsh and said he's made it easy for James and dove the wrong way. It's baffling. I think it's incredible. I just think it's a brilliant finish. If we had a player who'd done that, would you be going, oh, keeper shit, he's just dived? No, of course you wouldn't. Let's not be stupid here. You would be looking at it and going, what a finish. He shapes to go that way. All of his body, everything looks like he's going to go whip it round into that near post, and actually in the end he just brings his foot back in, and it's a tiny little thing. It's such a delicate finish, and I'll be honest, there is nothing more fucking irritating than a keeper being on the floor, the ball landing about 10 yards from the goal, slowly trickling towards the net, and every bastard in the stadium knows there's fuck all he can do about it. I've got nothing but, again, pains me to say it, I got nothing but applause for the 2 goals that Leeds scored last night. They were both really, really well worked goals.
Yeah, definitely. Right, let's move things on, and we'll talk about Shea Charles. Before I do that, obviously, reminder that keep all your predictions coming in for every game. You can. Should we do it for the Grimsby game? Why not? I'll do it for the Grimsby game as well. just throw a little curveball in there. But yeah, like I said, there's been loads of people that have been predicting it. There was actually. Let's have a look. How many people actually? Put a prediction in. I'm going to have a quick look. There was
just while you're looking at that, James, I would agree with Owlsman in the comments, who's just said he was disappointed about Marvin Johnson coming on so late. I would have quite liked to have seen him earlier and actually get some overlapping runners and give somebody else something else to think about down that wing.
Yeah, definitely. He's probably going to be playing against Grimsby on
Grimsby.
Tuesdays. So probably a bit of an eye on that game. There was 50 people that submitted a prediction. There was only 4 people that went for a Leeds win. So well done to those. There was Richard Murphy got it bang on. He got 2-0, and so did a guy by the name of just Tom. So well done to Tom, and well done for Richard for being a pessimistic wanker and thinking that we were going to lose. And not being one of the optimists like everyone else. So yeah.
If he's not listening to this now, he'll be listening back to that on tomorrow morning going, hey, these dickheads are oh no, I'm fucking not having that. Brew will be going everywhere in the morning, slippers coming off, dressing going on.
Well, Richard's already asked. He was in the on Twitter saying, "When does the league table come out for this?" And I'm like, "I've seen you. You got it bang on." Yeah. So he'll definitely be listening. In terms of the league table, yeah, I'll be doing something at some point once I've added it all up. There was no point on the first one. Everyone had it to be a win to Wednesday. I think only one person got it right as 4-0. Sunderland, nobody had a Sunderland win, so nobody got any points. So it was just basically the same as the first week. So yeah, now is the only time where there has been a few people picking up a few points. If you want to find a link, by the way, just head over to the Twitter, head over to the link in the bio, and all the links are on there. Man of the match ones, which I've been dreading putting out after the 2 defeats that we've had. But yeah, do get involved as always every single week. Right, Shea Charles looks set to be signed on a season-long loan from Southampton. Russell Martin has pretty much confirmed it. Danny's remaining coy at the time of recording. Obviously, recording this on Saturday evening, so by the time this goes out on Monday, people might have, if you are listening back to it, of course, he may have already signed. First of all, I looked at his numbers, Matt. He looks a baller. He looks a real good player. I think he started 15 times last season. He made over 30 appearances for Southampton. Obviously, Southampton now in the Premier League, hence why he's going to be allowed to go out on loan. Signed him for 10 million, I think it was, from Man City's youth team last summer. So yeah, a lot more money than what we can spend. And yeah, you look at his numbers and he's well up there for passes. I think he's pretty much got the most out of anyone. Same for touches. Same for in terms of progressive passes as well, and progressive carries. He's a player that, just from look again, I've not seen much of him, but just looking at the numbers, he wants to be on the ball. He's happy to be on the ball, and when he is on the ball, he wants to do something with it, as in he wants to move it further down the pitch.
I think if we get him in, you are about to see a distinctive change to our system. I'll be completely honest with you. I think that is whoever is currently in that number 10 needs to be very, very worried, because I think that is the only natural solution to being able to fit him into the team, because he is exactly what we are currently missing in our side in terms of that player who sits in that gap, isn't as interested in going forward as the other two, because I think what we've seen from Ingleson is he is much better in those advanced positions, making runs in behind forwards and past wingers. We know, we've all watched Barry Bannon for long enough to know where his qualities now lie at 34, going on 35 years old. He is a 20-year-old kid, bags of energy, bags of talent, who just wants to sit in front of a back four and just dictate play. It's an incredibly exciting signing, and something that I think we as a club should be really pleased about if we manage to get the deal over the line. Now, from everything Russell Martin seemed to suggest in his press conference, it was all wrapped up and done. We obviously haven't announced anything. Maybe I'm suggesting that's probably to do with let's let everything die down over the weekend and start the next week on a real positive, or just wait until Tuesday's out the way and then do it from there. All of which is absolutely fine. He is a really exciting player, but again, at 20 years old, he is... apologies to anybody who is 20 or slightly younger in the chat. He is a kid in footballing terms, and he will be expecting, and Southampton will be expecting him to play, which is why I would suggest it's spelling bad news for whoever is in that number 10, because our number 10 at the minute is having to come in and pick up the ball off centre-halves. That number 10 won't be doing that next, because that number 10 won't be there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, and yes, and push Barry Bannon and Ingleson a little bit further up the pitch where they can hurt opposition, especially Bannon. You know, we've spoke about it time and time again over the past 2, 3, 4 years. Ever since I started doing the podcast, really, that Barry Bannon drops far too deep, and when he plays further forward, he is more effective. And yeah, the thing for me is we are potentially loaning a player from a Premier League outfit, like I mentioned, cost £10 million only 12 months ago, and I think he's destined for big things. It's just, I think Southampton getting promoted was probably the worst thing that could happen for him. I think if they were in the Championship again this season, he would probably be playing a lot more football than what he did last season. He's just not going to get... He's probably just not there in terms of a Premier League footballer. So yeah, he needs to go out and get that, get some more experience. He didn't play a full season last season, like I mentioned. He only started 15 games. He didn't play. Obviously, we played Southampton in the opening game. He didn't play in that, and I think he played 4 minutes against us when they beat us 4-0. So we haven't seen much of him firsthand. Obviously, he's well, I say obviously. I mean, if you put 2 and 2 together, you'll work out that yes, he is the brother of Pierce Charles. So that's that's clearly Pierce Charles will have been talking to his brother about Danny Röhl. And that's going to be all the plaudits and everything, and telling him exactly what he's like, which obviously he'll be feeding back to Southampton, and whether they've got a loan manager or whatever that like clubs do. But for me, it just shows how much we've come. Remember when Theo Corbianu came and Alex Mighton was another one, and they came as a winger, and then we just didn't play with wingers, and then he went back to Wolves because they got face on because we'd not played him where he should have been played, and then Alex Mighton, well, we just sent him back, didn't we? And then he couldn't go anywhere else, could he? Because he'd already played for Forest, I think, and then you can only play for 2 teams in one season, so they'd got kite on about him as well. But we brought players in and just didn't play them where they should be played. Whereas now, teams are clearly, Brighton is obviously one. They're happy to send James Beadle out to us. Southampton are happy to send another player out there. And it's kind of building those relationships with these clubs, which is only going to help moving forward.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think you're 100%. Just on Alex Mighton, I will never forget Accrington Stanley away. But yeah, I think those relationships, I think, were helped with the fact that Danny's obviously also worked under worked at Southampton before. Russell Martin was incredibly complimentary when asked about it in terms of the style of football that we play, and also the fact that he's not going to be going to a team where he's playing in front of, Wednesday are massive and all of that. He's not going to be playing in front of somebody in terms of like 20,000 or whatever. He's going to be playing in terms of like big crowds, where it's something that if he goes back to Southampton and they are still in the Premier League, which they clearly see him as a player for the future because that's what Russell Martin says, he is going to have to get used to handling the pressure of playing in front of large crowds. I think it's a brilliant signing. I think it says a lot. Again, I agree with you. I think it says a lot about where we are as a club and the good work that we did towards the back end of last season still isn't going unnoticed, and that may stand us in really good stead over the next couple of days if we've got some incomings and outgoings going as well. You know, we all are expecting a couple of outgoings going, and that would, you know, you would like to think that that's bringing a few in as well. If they are all of this type of caliber, it does nothing but improve the squad, and you can't say fairer than that at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. I've just had a look at Alex Mighton. He's back at Forest playing in their youth team in the Premier League 2. So clearly that's not worked. And I think Theo Corbianu, he went to some team on the continent, didn't he? Some European side, but no idea where he is anymore. Yeah, I'm excited if he comes in. I think it's what we need. We probably needed him 2 games ago, if we're being perfectly honest. But yeah, great to see that we've obviously highlighted that that's an area that, you know, that we need to bring someone in. The transfer window should shut at the start of the season. I think it's daft that we're going to be going into, you know, we'll have played 3 league games, 2 cup games, and on the eve of the 4th league game before the transfer window actually shuts. And I just think it's absolutely mind-boggling that, you know, there's teams like Sunderland who we've played who've now not got Jack Clarke. We are one of the 2 teams that have played Sunderland with Jack Clarke in them, and everyone else doesn't have to have that. I know you could argue, well, there's injuries and stuff like that happens, so teams are never always equal and the same. But yeah, it just annoys me. Just on transfers as well, by the way, there will be no debate show on Wednesday. That's because we're doing I'm going to be doing a transfer deadline day live on Friday. Matt, you're hanging your head down. It was.
Sorry, James, I'm still PTSD from Jeff Hendrick and John Buckley from last year. It's still PTSD from sitting on that call for what you did a real stint on it. You were like 6 hours or whatever it was on it for 2 signings we all knew were coming through.
And they came right at the death as well.
Yeah.
They were like, he's signed, buff, off, finished.
Bed.
So it will be the debate show, but it'll be on Friday. Not sure what time it's going to start. Maybe 7, maybe 8. I don't know. It depends on what's kind of happening throughout the week in terms of signings. But I do think it is going to be busy, like you mentioned, incomings and outgoings. I think it is going to be quite lively because we do. It's evident in the last 2 games we do actually need a few more players. I've seen some people saying we're going to sign 5 or 6, and at the time this was kind of, you know, post Plymouth game, and I'm thinking, are you mad? We're winning league with this side. I'm probably thinking, we might need that sort of number. Whether we get 5 or 6 is another thing, but certainly I think, you know, we could see 2, 3, maybe 4 additions. One player that will be going, or looks like he's going the opposite direction, we'll quickly touch on him, is Bailey Cadamartri. He looks like he's going on loan to Lincoln. He's dropped down the pecking order, hasn't he, Matt, really, when you look at the options that we've got. He's not been involved in the match day squads either. I know he played against Hull. But yeah, we've obviously been linked with a striker from Brighton as well, the Irish lad. So if that one comes off, he's going to drop even further down. And if that's the case, we've all said, Matt, haven't we? He just needs to go and play football. And I think, dropping down a league into League One is probably going to do in the world of good, really. Yeah,
my only concern is the profile of club that he's going to. I would have much preferred him to be going to a more established, potentially traditionally quote unquote bigger club than Lincoln, in terms of your Boltons, your Disney FC, whoever, I would have much preferred them to be, I would have much preferred him to be going to a side like that rather than Lincoln, just from the fact of there is expectation when you pull on a Sheffield Wednesday shirt that is, different to, I think, a lot of other clubs, definitely different to playing for Lincoln. Saying all of that, if he goes to Lincoln, finishes League One's top scorer and scores 35, it's been a wonderful loan move for all involved. I think my main concern around it is, I've mentioned the fans, but I think it's also the style of football. I must confess, the only thing that I've watched of Lincoln is obviously when we've played them twice over the past couple of seasons. I don't know whether the style of football has changed or whether it's not. If it is, you look at, we've just been talking about Shea Charles. Southampton are loaning him primarily for the fact of we play an exciting and attractive brand of football which is suitable to a player going and adapting to the Premier League. Yeah. Is Bailey Cadamartri going to Lincoln to play a style of football that is suitable to come in and play mid-table top-end championship, which is where ultimately we would like him to be? At this point, I'm not sure going and getting the shit kicked out of you for 9 months is going to do anything.
Yeah, it may be a case of the whole James Beadle thing where he goes on loan, he does, up until January, and then he might move to that side that is up near the top. Saying that, I mean, Lincoln have won 2 and lost 1 of their opening 3 games in the league. Well, as you was talking, I was kind of looking at the stats and seeing if I could kind of paint a picture as to what they're like. Not a great deal. They won 3-2 against Burton with 31% possession. Then they was at home, that was away. Then they lost 2-1 to Barnsley. They had 17 shots and 53% possession and lost 2-1. And then today they've licked Mansfield 4-1 with just 27% possession, but 16 shots on goal. So
poor Lee Gregory.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that's. I'm not sure how that transpires in terms of football. But clearly, I mean, Mansfield, I think, are one of the better sides, aren't they? So they would have liked to keep hold of the ball. But yeah, clearly a bit of a smash and grab effort today. But
it's a good move, isn't it, for the player? Like, he does need football, and if that is the only loan option that is out there at that level, then cool. Like, you take it, don't you? But yeah, it's that picture that you've just painted there in terms of possession stats and shots is very similar to Sheffield Wednesday. I got no idea what the fuck we're actually going to do this season, the same as them.
Yes, definitely. Right, let's move on to these next two games that are coming up. We've got Grimsby on Tuesday, and then it's Millwall on Saturday. I've not got anything written down for either side. All I know is Grimsby got hammered. I think it was 4-1. Weren't it on? They were playing on Thursday night. Thursday night. No, they're not in Europe. They are. It's just that new time for the games on Sky. So yeah, it's a game where I think we're going to make. If we could make 12 changes, we'd make 12. Like, we are going to make a lot of changes for Tuesday's game. Probably the similar side to the one that played against Hull. And I think we're just going to play in a similar style, and it's just a real good opportunity to get through to the next round and get that big cup tie that we all want, isn't it? Really, that's going to get clipped up when we lose 2-0 to said Grimsby on Tuesday.
I was just going to be saying, you're going to be stood there, pissed down rain, going, "How the fuck have we lost to this lot?"
Yep, you are 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's an opportunity to rotate and play. It'd be interesting to see if we've had any outgoings by then, because there's obviously, like people who played in that game who you might expect to move on. Your Callum Pattersons, Bambo Diaby won't be there, so it'll be interesting to see who comes back in at that.
He's still on that horse, I think. Bambo is still just trotting around the training ground.
Do you know what? I am going to say this. There's a bloke who sits in front of me at the match. I don't think he listens. Alan. He come out with an absolute belter yesterday, which I am just going to say. He said, "It's the first time I'm ever seen a donkey riding a horse." And I thought, oh my God, he goes, "It's the best announcement I've ever seen." I was in pieces.
I feel sorry for that horse. I mean, the Bambo Diaby on your back. Jesus Christ, his back must be in tatters. That horse is now laid flat out in the stable like, fucking hell, lads. You never guess what they had me doing
fridge
yesterday.
Around.
carrying a wardrobe round for last hour. Fucking hell, my back's fucked.
Oh man, but yeah, so it'd be interesting to see who comes in for him. I don't know what the fitness of Akin for Maywo is, but again, I would like him to get some footballing because at the minute it does feel like there's not enough pressure on our centre halves in terms of positions for starting spots. So that would be good. Very excited to hopefully see Charlie McNeil again. I am going to be slightly more controversial in here. I would like to see Michael Smith do 90 minutes. I do not want Ike Ugbo anywhere near that, and I want him playing on Saturday.
Yeah, if Ike Ugbo's coming on, something's probably gone a little bit wrong. You mentioned sat in the pissing rain. I'm just having a look at the weather. I will be there on Tuesday. I managed to sort myself a ticket. 24 degrees it's going to be on Tuesday. I think by the time of kick-off, it's going to be around about 21 degrees. Out on the coast, it might be a little bit windy. I'll have had my fish and chips. I'll be loving life.
You're now going to tell me... Yeah, sorry, James. You're now going to tell me South London weather on Saturday's pissing it down and snow.
No, I think next week's actually going to be quite decent for in terms of weather. Weather on 23 degrees on Saturday. You can leave your reflective jacket at home, mate, because you'll be.
I'm going. Yeah, if it all goes really horrendously down at Millwall, I'm sacking it off and going to Carnival. Forget it. I'm just going Notting Hill instead and just having a wonderful time. But yeah, I'm hoping it's a really good performance again on Tuesday. Again, a game that we mentioned at the time when we got drawn of it's a real potential banana skin. Of a game, because I think I'm right in saying Grimsby have sold out their allocation. We've sold out our allocation in terms of the extra tickets that we were given as well. I think it will be a incredibly competitive game. That 4-1 loss is no barometer of it, because this is like our Arsenal game from a few years ago where Arsenal rolled into town and we had 30-odd thousand there and we hit them like a steam train. The same could happen here. I am hoping we go there and just do a very professional, boring job and win 1-0.
Yeah, they've got David Artell, who's actually born in Rotherham by all accounts. Played for Gibraltar. I didn't even know Gibraltar had a football team, but played for Rotherham. He was at Crewe for 5 years, which is where people might have heard him from. Didn't have a job after that, but yeah, he's at Grimsby. Just have a look how they've started the season. Like I mentioned, they got hammered the other day, but how have they done it in the other games? Won 1, lost 2. They beat Cheltenham 3-2. They lost the fish and chip derby on the opening week. They lost 1-0 to Fleetwood Town. So yeah, they're not doing great so far, but. Who did they play? They played Bradford. I think they beat them on penalties in the first round of the cup. So yeah, we'll see. And then it's, as you mentioned, it's Millwall on Saturday. That is a chance to get back on winning terms in it. Really, you mentioned it is away from home, but still we should be going there. I don't want to say full of confidence because that has taken a little bit of a beating over the last 2 games, but we should still be going there looking to get the 3 points, and if we do come away with 3 points, it'll be no surprise, really.
Yeah, I would be hoping we go and see a performance more akin to Plymouth in terms of the pressing rather than the more low block defensive style that we saw at times yesterday. I think the reason why I've mentioned Ike Ugbo wanting Ike Ugbo to start on next Saturday is because I think Jamal Lowe needs to come out. I think he looks absolutely bollocks. He
couldn't run, like especially in the second half. Like how he didn't get hooked, immediately after coming out for the second half. I have no idea.
And that's not a slight on him. We're asking him to play a position which is not his most fruitful, that he's kind of made a career out of, where he's made a career out of coming off that left. We're asking him to play a lone front man where he initiates a press, and that is, I can imagine from somebody who wants to have lots of touches of the ball, that is a thankless task. But yeah, I would like to see a change there. I would hope we see that. Millwall are a side over the course of this season who seem to concede a lot. I know down at Bristol the other weekend they scored a lot, but they also did manage to concede a lot. I think they have had the opposite effect of what they had last year in terms of Neil Harris came in last year and had that huge big upward trajectory, and they sort of, for lack of a better phrase, Millwalled their way to safety. I think what is now ringing true is they've gone back to that full 12 months ago cycle where they realise they need something more than that Millwall that Millwall style of football to now survive, do anything more than just survive in the Championship.
The only thing for me, I'm just looking, both games, so they lost 3-2 to Watford on the opening weekend, then 4-3, as you've just mentioned, to Bristol. They drew 0-0 today against Hull. But just looking in those games, they got that back to 2-2. They were 2-0 down against Watford. They got it back to 2-2 late on, and then they conceded a really late goal to obviously to lose 3-2. The Bristol City game, they were 2-0 down. They got it back to 3-2. They were leading in that one, and then did throw it away and lost 4-3. But the difference is, we were speaking about it earlier, both games they've gone behind and they've found a way of actually getting back into the game. All right, granted they've come away with absolutely nothing in both of them. However, you know, you look at us, if we go a goal down, if Millwall do get that first goal, which they haven't done that so far, so they look like very slow starters. They conceded 22nd minute in the opening weekend, and then they were 2-0 down after 12 minutes last week. So we need to get into them from the off and actually get a goal up. But when we do get a goal up, we can't just sit back, because you know they're going to come back at us, and they've shown in recent weeks that they can still do that. Whether the opposite happens and we do concede, it's going to be interesting to see whether we can actually turn it on, because as you mentioned, a Neil Harris side is going to. We've been talking about battling hard and that kind of grit and determination that we haven't really got. I think the Millwall side is going to have that in abundance, and that's what they kind of live off. Really, that's why they've been able to drag himself into these games. It's just going to be interesting. We need to get that goal, and to be fair, 70 minutes will be fine for a first goal. Let's not score after 5, because it could be an interesting game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we need to, by the idea of a Plymouth performance, it needs to be a more complete and well-rounded performance than what we've seen over the last two, because the last two games have not been complete or well-rounded in any way, shape or form. They have been a bit of a mess, really, from both, people have laid the blame at a tactical point of view, people have laid the blame at players. Millwall last year was a real turning point for this squad. It was a do-or-die 6-pointer in February. I can't believe I'm saying that. And actually, we went on to be... After that, it kind of kick-started us into a really good run of form where we won 5 of the next 6. I think this is an important game for a totally different reasoning. I think this game you will learn a hell of a lot about what this Sheffield Wednesday side is going to be this season and is going to shape up to be. Plymouth, I think, is an anomaly. Sunderland and Leeds, we've done to death over the last 2 podcasts. This next one is a real test of, right, okay, what can we expect from this side? Because this side finished the season as strongly, if not more strongly, than us last year. Where are we going now against this lot? A team who came into the season different optimism, but still came in with a lot of optimism on kind of like where they could push onto and where they could kick onto this season, and kind of going back to that old adage of that no one likes us. We'll find a way to get a result. We will learn a lot about Sheffield Wednesday come 5 o'clock. Well, come this time next week.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what? That a win would do us the world of good in terms of that positivity. I don't think it'll come back in as much as what it was after the Plymouth game, but there'll be that belief there again, and people might just think, well, actually, yeah, Sunderland are good, Leeds are good. When you're looking at it, we've beat Plymouth, we'll have beat Millwall if that indeed does happen, and then you're thinking, right, actually, yeah, maybe we are a bottom of the top half of the league side. Maybe we are tracking for an 8th, a 9th, or a 10th, or something like that. And actually, I think it'll put some minds at rest. I think just in terms of actually, we're going to be all right this season. The flip side is, another a poor performance, and you might be thinking, actually, is it just because we have played shit these past 3 weeks? So yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. Matt, let's have some predictions then. Grimsby game first. I'll let you go first on this one. It's total lottery. I appreciate that, but what's the score going to be on the East Coast?
You're in for a long evening. 1-1, Wednesday win on penalties.
Fair enough. Look, I'll take that if it means we go through. I'm going to go for a 3-0 win. I think we're going to have far too much for Grimsby. I think they're going We're going to huff and puff, but yeah, we're going to have too much. Smith's going to score 2, and McNeil's going to get another one, and he's going to be knocking on Danny's door saying, "Come on, mate, let me have a start." Yeah, I'm going to go 3-0. Millwall, I'll go first on this one. 2-1 I'm going to go for. We'll score first, they will equalise, but as has happened in 2 of their 3 games, they'll concede again, and we'll get a win, and we'll be talking about a fantastic win this time next week. What you're heading down, aren't you, Matt? Before you give your prediction.
Yeah, I'm very looking forward to it. It is a really good away day. For anybody who is down there next week, I'll be in London Bridge from about, I don't know, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, if you are down there and you're either on the Discord or you get at me on Twitter, I'm more than happy to meet up for a beer or 8. Yeah, I'm pleased you said 2-1 and we're scoring first, because I thought if Millwall score first, well, that's going down straight to shit. I think heart says 1-0. Head says 1-1, and we go into an international break still not really knowing, but with 4 points on the board. I'll go with the emotion at this point in the season. 1-0 Wednesday.
1-0 Wednesday. Look, I will definitely take either of those, a 2-1 or a 1-0 or a 5-4, a win. That is all we need. It's one of those, isn't it, where we were talking about kind of the principles and stuff, and playing good football and everything else, and then it's amazing what 2 poor results does for you, because then all of a sudden you just think, I just want to win a game. I just want it to be 3 points, and just alleviate some of those pressures on the team and everything else, and yeah, go into that break with 3 points would be very, very nice. Right. Let's wrap things up. We're going to be doing extra time, which a bit of a different one this time. We're going to be doing it came off the back of a comment in the Discord, a Pomp 11. So basically, it's just a best 11. Everyone loves best 11s, but based on the career of the player, not necessarily what they did at Sheffield Wednesday. It could be a player that's done well at Sheffield Wednesday, but mainly what they've done in their career, and putting a best 11 together, which mine's not looking very thin on the ground, so it might be a lot of winging when we go there. So if you want to listen to that one, do head over to patreon.com/WTID pod. If you're also watching on YouTube as well, and you're thinking, where's he got that North Stand t-shirt from? And you've probably seen loads
again, James. Seamless again.
I'm getting good at this, aren't I? You'll have seen loads dotted around. I even saw one in the new barrack yesterday. Head over to WTIDpod.myshopify.com, or if that's a mouthful, just head over to Twitter, and there's a link in the description, and you can find that there. And also the new Chris, I forgot his name then, Chris Powell t-shirt that they've done.
That less seamless. That one was less seamless.
Do you know what, as well, whilst we were talking, when we were talking about Shea Charles and we were talking about Russell Martin, I kept getting in my head thinking, have I said his name wrong? And I'm like, I was trying not to say Ricky Martin, which is a totally different person. And it's like, she bangs.
Very different, very different t-shirt as well.
yeah, it would be very, very different. No, there is none of those on the shop. But yeah, check those out. Again, massive thanks for everyone. Massive thanks for all the Leeds fans in the comments as well. I'm sure you've done the algorithm, the world of good over on YouTube. And yeah, we'll see you all on Friday for the Transfer Deadline Day special. So thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you all next time. Cheers.